Hello. Today we will be looking at React custom hook. What are the React custom hook? Why do we need custom hook in the first place? Why can't we just avoid creating a custom hook and avoid the complexity? So why they are required and how they can benefit your project, your code, and improve your efficiency. So to do that, I have to demonstrate you the problem first. What kind of problem can be solved with the custom hook? Okay, so for example, why do we need custom hook? Okay, so if I say in a simple word, then the answer is why do we need a function? The same reason is why do we need custom hook? Because we want to reuse some lines of code, okay, for our uh, programming, so we can reduce the amount of lines, plus we introduce reusing with the context, with the help of function. Okay, so the function is reusing. Same way, React custom hook are made to reuse other hooks. What do we do with functions? We do the same with hooks. To give you an example, if we require two hooks on some place and we need to use that two hooks on every page, then it is better to convert them to custom hook, to a new hook, so you can only use a single hook. So we will see the example, okay, by seeing the form validation problem. So when we want to make a rich form, okay, and we want to apply a validation where we apply inline validation, that okay, whenever user type anything, instantly user can see, okay, if it is um, valid or not. Okay, so to do that, I have already created a React application and I will quickly create a form here. So this is app.js and I will just remove this thing. Okay, and let's create a form here, and inside that form we create input like this, and we will name it like placeholder. Let's make a placeholder with first name. Okay, so we have created this input for first name, and I will just do one thing on submit equal to, and event dot stop propagation, and event dot prevent default. Sorry, propagation is not required, but prevent default is fine. Okay, so let's see if it is here. Okay, it is shown here. Let's zoom in a little bit, and now uh, what do we need to store the value into state. So that's normal thing. So let's create state for that. Okay, the state would be like first name, and set first name equal to use state. By default we will put the value double quote, and now we are going to bind it here. So value equal to first name, and on change e, and set first name. Okay, that's the normal process we do. Now the first name, and we also, instead of using last name and thing, let's just add email here. Okay. And to do that, we need to create a state for email. Email and set email, and here we also replace email and set email. Okay, and also create a button, submit button. And let's make it type equal to submit, so we get the form on submit event triggered. And here we can just console log our first name and email. Okay, so we have saved it. Let's say the console, open the console, and let me enter here Hamid, an email, anything. Okay, and if I click here, I will see there are two things. If I just click here without anything, nothing is pasted displayed here. Okay, so now we want to add validation. What the first validation would be, that if everything is valid, then and then this submit should print this. Okay, so we need to maintain a state which will say that okay, the entire form is valid. Okay, we can either do a calculated or we can just use state. So let's create a state, right? And instead of let, we should use const, and the state is form valid. Set is form valid equal to use state, and we will make it false by default. Okay, by default the form is not valid. Now how do we calculate if form is valid or not? So on every on change, whenever we do the change, we are going to set this value. Okay, so how do we define if it is valid or not? So let's create a function, set is form valid. Okay, and here we will pass some values. What's the problem here? Set is already been okay. Okay. Calculate form valid based on what? Based on the values. Let's say based on the state. Okay, so what we will say if we are putting validations here, so we will do like is valid equal to by default false, and then we say that okay, if not email or not first name, then is valid equal to false. Let me correct the email. Okay, and then we do set is form valid to is valid. Well, this is not a right way. Instead of this, we could have used use memo, but for simplification, let's just use this. Okay, so every time we set our state, after setting the state, we need to calculate form valid. So after calculating the state, what we need to do, we may need to call use effect. Okay, and what will be our dependency? That first name, email. Okay. And then we say, we call this calculate form valid. Okay, let's not add this here, otherwise it will re-render. Okay, let's see if we can do this. So before going ahead, let's do a console log is form valid on every render. Okay, so is valid false. Okay, let's type anything here. It's still false. It is still false. Well, it should be true. Okay, my mistake. Okay, my mistake. By default it should be true, and then it turns to false. No. To have this, we need to make initially true. Okay, when there are two values, it's true. If I remove anything, it's false. Okay, so this is the basic validation. And now what we can do, we can just disable this button based on the state. Okay, sorry, it needs to be inverted. Yeah, so once form is valid, the button is allowed, otherwise the button is not allowed. So till this we have done little bit of validation, but actually user is not saying anything. Okay, so we are not placing any messages that okay, that this value is wrong or this value is wrong. We are not placing the messages. So we need to place messages for each of the input, that this input is wrong or this input is wrong. Okay, so let's just remove this app CSS, so we have this vertical view instead. And we don't have a vertical view right now. Let's have a div wrapper on top of them. Okay, yeah, it is fine. We are not deeping dive into the designing part. Okay, so what we need to do now, we need to calculate is valid for each of the input. Okay, so how do we calculate that? On every on change we are going to calculate that. Okay, so let's just create more state. So let's do it for first name. Const is first name valid. Okay, and then do this thing, set is first name valid, use state. By default it is going to be false, and when we enter this, that we do a validation before set. Okay, we set the state, then we do validation. Instead of doing if, let's do set is first name valid equal to e.target.value. Okay, so if there is a value, then it is valid, otherwise it is not valid. Okay, so now what else we need to do? We need to show an error message. So whenever the form is not valid, is first name not valid. Okay, then we show a message, please enter first name with let's style red, please enter first name. Okay, so we need to show this message. And we can make it smaller, font size, let's say 10. Okay, and for the email we need to do the same thing. So before going ahead, let's just make another div and create some differences here. So style equal to display flex direction column, and then we have row gap and make it like 15. Okay, so we now have the gap between buttons. Yeah, so okay, you see this, whenever I type anything, the message goes away. Okay, so now suppose that user is coming first time and user see that okay, please enter first name, or we can or if it is email, then user say email is not correct, but user have not entered anything. So until user enter anything, we don't have to show anything. Okay, so to achieve that thing, what we have to do, we have to use this on blur effect. Okay, so this is also called touch this will be touched for mobile. You can use on blur, or we can use on focus. Okay, but on focus will not be correct, because until user type anything, we can't do this. Okay, so let's use on blur, that user sees the message when he goes away from the input. There can be, this can be done on focus, this can be done on change as well. Okay, so when first time on change is clicked, you need to say that okay, the input is clicked and now we should show error or anything. But before user goes away from the input, we should not show error. So on blur, what we need to do, we need to do validation. Okay, E, yeah. So now we also need to add this here, that another condition would be that this on blur is also set. That means user have clicked this or entered something here. So to handle this, we need to create another state that is first name touched, set is first name touched, and let's add it here and let's make it true, because on blur we will do that. And we need to add condition that is first name is touched as well. So on first time nothing is happened. If I write anything and press tab, nothing is showing because it is valid. If I write nothing, then it is showing. Okay, because I have already done a blur. For example, a second time, if I just do a tab, okay, if I just click it and go out, then it will show the error. Okay, you need to enter the first name. So this is the problem. Okay, we have the one field, and to calculate that one field or to show errors for the single field, we have to create 3 states. This is the problem. And this becomes a huge problem when you have 10 fields. So how many state do you have? 30 state. So managing 30 state in a single file is a nightmare. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are going to create a hook that will simplify this process. So let's create a file which is called, let's use form input dot jsx x. Okay, let's use x. So we have created this function, and instead of returning this, we need to return some other things like, so these 3 states are going to come here, and we are going to return is touched. That is one of the thing. Okay, so let's make one of the thing is touched. Other thing would be a value, and the third thing would be what was that, valid. Okay, is valid and value. Okay, is set is touched, set value, and set is valid. So default value would be like is touched will be false, and this will be default value. And let's import this, and we can see, for example, this is default value. By default it is empty string, but many times when we are doing editing, we would need a value, so we can just grab it from the argument. Default value. Okay, and we can do this thing, either default value from the parent or just make it empty string. Okay, so now what have we exposed? We have exposed these 3 things. Okay, and the other thing that we can expose is on change function. Okay, I'm writing it inline. In sophisticated ways, it can be written other ways as well. So what we have to do, we have to mimic this environment. So on change, we do this 2 thing, and on blur, we also do these 2 things. So what do we do? Set, first thing we do is set value. Okay, and the second thing is we calculate if it is valid or not. Now to calculate if it is valid or not, this is the normal case. Okay, that if there is a value then it is valid, otherwise it is not valid. And this can become a complex, and we need to do email validation, we may need to do regex validation and other kind of things. For now what we can do, we can just accept the validate function. Okay, inside options, by default, yeah, let's create option as a normal object. Okay, and what user can do, user can provide us a validation function. Set is valid, and what we are going to do, we are going to provide a value to that function if it is provided. Okay, so let's say if options dot validate, let's not do that. Okay, option dot validate, if it is there, then we need to call options dot validate, and then we need to pass a value here, and external function will do the validation, that how validation is going to be happen. So on blur we need to do validation like this as well. Okay, we set touched true. What we can do extra thing here, at if it is already true, already touched, then we don't need to do anything. Then why do we even do the state change? So this is a custom hook where we can use other hooks. That's the simple definition of having a custom hook. Now what we can do is we can create const, and let's say first name equal to use form input. Default value will be empty, and what we are going to do is we need to provide and validate function. We will receive a value, and then we need to do validation here. So right now I am doing this simple validation, and what it is giving me error, first name has already been defined, so let's not define it. Okay, so for this state what we can do, first name dot value is going to be the correct thing now. Okay, we will get rid of this thing is form valid entirely when we have implemented this for everything. So let's remove this 3 state as well. Now what we can do here is that on change we don't have to do anything, we just have to provide first name dot on change. Here we need to do first name dot value, and here we need to do first name dot on blur. Sorry, instead of on blur I have it on blue, let's make it on blur. Okay, and here, so we have to check these 2 conditions. So let's also make some shortcut, or we can say reusability here, that should show error. Let's create this property, and this property will do this thing if it is not valid and if it is touched. Okay, so now what we can do, we can just write like this, should show error. Okay, so what we have done, we have just reduced the use of states. Instead now we can do this thing in the same state. To reduce this function, we can use a yup schema and many different things. Okay, when we do yup schema, then we can reduce this multiple state as well. Okay, This further can be reduced. This further reusability can be extended further. But let's do it for now. So for email, we also create email. And now, instead of using a simple validation, let's use a complex regex validation for email. Okay, so let's just copy regex from Stack Overflow. This will be the regex. Is it? I'm not finding. Let's also say JavaScript. Yeah, so let's copy this. But to do this, we need to test value against this regex. And we will remove this state. We will also remove this state. How do we calculate form is valid or not? To do that, we simply do this thing. We simply combine them. So how do we combine them? Now we will just use this function and return first name is valid and then email dot is valid. Okay, and we will use this like a function. So here we can just use it like a function. And here as well, what we need to do, we need to do it like this. So instead of first name, let's use email. Now let's see if it is working or not. So without entering first name, I am pressing tab. Without entering email, I am pressing tab. Nothing is being shown for email because we have not included this line. So let's do this for email and write it like, please enter a valid email. Okay, so without entering anything, this does not work. So let's enter Hamid as the first name and then email hmd@lohar.com. Okay, so you see, when I did a correct email, then only this submit button is appearing. Okay, if I just go away without doing this, it will show me error, and it will show me error until I correct my email. And if I now click the submit, then I see that okay, the first name and last name states. So instead of that, we can show here value. Now we can use this value further. Okay, and I can just remove this state. Sorry. So this is how we can create a custom state to simplify our work. So what we did, we got rid of 6 different state, and instead that we used a single state. Now what the other advantages are here, that we can extend the functionality to infinite way. Okay, we have some libraries like Formik, Form Hook, React Hook Form. Okay, so they have created the custom hook which handles the form. They are doing it with Yup schema, schema validation, and many fancy things. But this is a way to use a custom hook. And whenever you require to use multiple hooks on multiple places, then you should create a custom hook. So this is for the video, and we have explained how can we use custom hooks. Again, for the definition, custom hooks is nothing but a group of hooks. When group of hooks are combined into a single function and return some value, that would be a customized value. Okay, so that becomes a hook, custom hook.